the answer. We think we should keep the promise to current seniors and people 10 years away from retiring, but then reform the system for the next generation so that it's safe and solvent for current seniors and for future generations, because Medicare is going bankrupt.
Oh, son of a gun. He is slick, isn't he? He's doing the reverse sell job on you. I think the American people have got it figured out. Ryan is out there telling the American people that they're going to reform. You know what reform is? Reform is a cut. Reform is a cut. Reform is code word for attack, and that's exactly what they want to do. They want to attack the programs that have been successful for Americans for decades, since 1965. Took the Democrats and the progressives and the liberals 22 years to get it passed, but they finally got it passed. It was a heavy lift, and it has saved lives, and it has saved money over years. Saved lives. Notice how I put lives before money? The Republicans now want to put money before lives. That's what they want to do. And a voucher program, a voucher is a cut. A voucher is cheaper care. But do the American people matter with these numbers like this? These are the only two numbers you need to consume tonight, folks. Raising taxes on those who make over $250,000 a year, 64% of Americans are there. Protecting Medicare and Medicaid, 80% of the American people are there. You just heard the sound bites from the Republican leadership. They want to listen to the people. The hell they do. It's about the money. It's about them. It's about blowing up the federal budget deficit to the point so they can cut these very programs back so they can give more tax cuts to the rich. And I'll show you later on in this broadcast exactly what is in the Ryan plan. And it's all for the wealthy. But Ryan sits there saying that, well, you know what? We're going to reform it. We're going to save it. Baloney. President Obama's not falling for it. Here he is.
The House Republicans just passed a proposal, and their main plan to reduce our long-term deficits and debt is to turn Medicare into a voucher program. What would happen under this proposal is you'd get a set amount of money. You could then go out onto the private marketplace and buy insurance, but if the voucher you were getting was for $6,000 or $7,000, and the insurance company said it's going to cost you $12,000, well, you're going to have to make up that difference. Now, I think that is the wrong way to go. That would fundamentally change Medicare as we know it, and I'm not going to sign up for that.
Well, Mr. President, as I endorsed Donald Trump last night, I endorse you tonight. I mean, come on. You've got it. You're spot on. You're speaking like a good lefty right now, but you're also speaking for the popular thinking in America. Now, there's one other facet to this story that I find very interesting. We have these 6 senators who think that they have the answers, and 3 of them are Democrats and the other 3 Republicans. So it's not all Republicans. There are some Democrats who are wavering on this, too. These 3 Democrats are members of the Gang of 6. And now they're starting to buy into this. Well, maybe we can chip away at the big 3, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. Well, this is what the numbers are right here. Why would they do that? Why would they cave into that? You know what they ought to do? The Democrats ought to leave the Gang of 6 and let them be the Gang of 3 and say we're sticking with the American people and we're not backing down. But you see, that might take some Democratic guts. Get your cell phones out. I want to know what you think. Tonight's text question, will tax cuts for the rich help the poor? Text A for yes, text B for no to 622-639. And, of course, you can go to our new blog at ed.msnbc.com. We're bringing the results later on in the show. Joining me now is former Pennsylvania governor and current NBC News political analyst, Mr. Ed Rendell. Governor, good to have you with us tonight. I got one question for you. Do you in your heart think that the Republicans will ever sign on to a tax increase?
Yeah, I think they will eventually, Ed. I think there are Republicans like Senator Coburn who understand the realities and are really serious about finding a balanced way to deal with America's deficit.
What's a balanced way, Ed? What's a balanced way?
Well, a balanced way is, look, there have to be spending cuts, and we understand that. The spending cuts can't go to things that are essential to the safety net, but there are ways to cut money. When I was governor in my last 2 years because of the recession, Ed, we cut over $2 billion out of the Pennsylvania budget. And I'll give you an idea on Medicare and Medicaid. Why don't we use the federal government's leveraged buying power to drive down the cost of pharmaceuticals, to make the pharmaceutical companies make less profit off of us.
But the pharmaceutical companies are in the back pockets of the Republicans. And, of course, they like the deregulation. They also like the corporate tax breaks that they get. There would be no reason for or incentive for the Republicans to do that.
Right, except for the fact that the key here is what we've got to do is drive down the cost of Medicare and Medicaid without taking away the benefits to the people. And we can do that by controlling health care costs. And what's the number one way to control health care costs today? Drive down the cost of pharmaceuticals. So I think that's an important facet. There are ways to drive down the cost of these programs without taking away benefits from people.
But raising the taxes on the top 2%.
Oh, of course, that's a slam dunk.
You believe that the Republicans will sign on to that?
I think they're in the end, because of the poll numbers that you're citing, I think in the end there'll be people signing on to that.
Well, that would be a heavy lift for the Democrats to convince the Republicans that if they raise taxes that they'll still be able to create jobs. That would go against everything they've been talking about.
Except look what happened after Bill Clinton raised taxes on the top 2% of Americans. 22.5 million jobs. I know, it's unbelievable. When you look at the path to prosperity, Ryan's bill, he wants us to go back to what President Bush did, cut taxes, and we had almost no job creation. And he forgets about what Bill Clinton did, raising taxes, getting rid of the deficit, and boom, jobs took off, the greatest in our lifetime.
No doubt.
But there's one other thing I think that we're going to come around to doing, and even some Republicans, and that's ending a lot of these loopholes. We give away, Ed, and you know this, $400 billion in basically corporate loopholes every year. Corporations in 1950 used to pay 30% of the overall revenue of the country. They now pay 6.6%.
Ed Rendell, NBC political analyst, you are a heck of a lot more optimistic in dealing with the Republicans than I am.
We're not going to convince them.
You. I don't
You're
think
not going to convince them. I'm not going to convince them. Democrats aren't going to convince them. You know what's going to convince them? Those polls.
I hope so.